Okay, thank you. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on evidence and technology to drive impact. So, my name is Eiji Yamada. I'm from JICA Ogata Research Institute in Tokyo. So, this is my great pleasure to moderate this session. So, transport projects are large and critical. So, but we often do not know what works best and why to deliver the intended impact. So today, we will explore how rigorous impact evaluation and innovation data, such as GPS, satellite, and even AI, can help us make better project decisions and policy decisions. So this session will be very interactive. So after a few presentations to deliver some ideas, interactive exercise session will follow. So let me now invite our opening speaker. So it is my great pleasure to invite Jamie Leder, Director, Emerging Areas Transport Sector Office at ADB, to deliver the opening remarks. Okay, thank
you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on a very important topic, one that underpins much of what we've been discussing this week. I'd like to especially thank our colleagues at World Bank Development Impact Group and IE Connect, our colleagues and friends at JICA, the Government of Japan, as well as ADB, both within the transport, but much more importantly from our economics team, ERDI. One thing that is so important is to ensure that there is collaboration, bringing together a whole wealth of different skills to apply that. So the work and the technical and financial support we provide to our clients is the best type of support we can provide, but as well there's evidence to back that up. This session today is building on a program that was first held between the three organizations, World Bank, ourselves, and JICA, in January of this year, the Tokyo Leads program. And so we want to continue that momentum, build on that, expose more of our client governments, more of our staff, more of our partners to what is possible with this new approach. And that's really to embed evidence, detailed analytics, and rigorous evaluation to ensure what we are trying to achieve is being delivered through the types of assistance. And there's another reason for that. Our clients don't necessarily want the simple types of solutions anymore. They're increasingly seeking solutions to much more complex issues. In the transport area, for example, logistics change, quite complex, certainly when you get into multimodal transport. So how do we prove that information across countries, across boundaries, land-based, water-based, and the shipping costs are improving? Urban areas, hugely complicated how those are measured and monitored. And even in the roads subsector, can we show that is that road network bringing the right types of crops, or has that economic benefit, social development happening as a result of the transport investments that we're making? And at the same time, we're seeing huge advances in the ability for such tools like this to be used because of the advances that are being made in the data and how that data can be collected or analyzed. GPS data is helping us significantly in all sorts of ranges, but satellite imagery, we're almost getting, or we can get almost real-time information so what we're hoping to achieve can be monitored to see whether it is. And if it is real-time, and we're looking at a more programmatic rather than a project approach, we can fine-tune the types of solutions that are being developed to ensure that they are adapting to and meeting the changing environment that we're all in. Mobile phone data, another source of huge information, as well as analyzing that through AI tools as well. So we're in a very different current situation. We're probably going to be in a very different future 5 years from now when all of these different data sources, analytical tools come together. But let's ride the crest of that wave to make sure we are ready to look at how we can build that. Financial institutions, bilaterals, multilaterals, we respond to the government's needs. And I always say that this is a process. We need the knowledge to show that things can happen. We need to build up the awareness, and that's one of the reasons for the Transport Forum, to show you what's possible. Then we need some of the deeper dives with client governments to really look at what building up that institutional capacity for things to happen downstream. So today is sort of in that capacity, and we want to work closely with select projects, select governments who are showing great interest in building up this type of work as well. And again, it's good that we had a donor or a partner roundtable yesterday. Again, this is JICA, World Bank, ADB, and others. We have DFID, FCDO up on stage to demonstrate that the data isn't just being used by one single entity for one single purpose. Once the data's there, the use of that data should be available, open source to everyone, to build up, to ensure that the governments are able to access that, not just for projects that ADB or World Bank or JICA are financing, but their own investments, their own solutions that they're building as well. Again, this is a bit of a deeper dive, so I will encourage you to be as participatory as possible. Please ask questions, please challenge some of the speakers to see what's there. But I think more importantly, if you see an opportunity for you to use this in your countries, raise that, say, is this possible? We have this kind of an issue. How could we use that? Because that's basically what we want to do. We don't just showcasing this, we want to work with you to see things being delivered. And ultimately, that's better evidence leads to better decisions, but we have to work with you. You are the government, you are the ones who will make those decisions, and so hopefully we can support you with these tools, with this information and impact assessment to look at those better decisions that are possible. Final message, collaboration. Please digest what you're having, ask questions. When you go home, that's not the end of it. Please reach out to us, World Bank, JICA, other of our partners, to see how we can work and find solutions to meet the challenges or the opportunities that you're facing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. So next, it is my pleasure to invite our keynote speaker, Sveta Milsheva, a senior economist, Development Impact World Bank Group. She will present how impact evaluation and innovative data can help maximize returns from transportation investment, moving beyond monitoring to understand the causality. Thank you.
Great. Clicker. All right, well, as I'm waiting for the clicker, I will say good morning, everyone. It's exciting to see so many people still here on a very early Friday morning, last day of what's been, I think, a really exciting forum. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to introduce kind of everyone to this topic of how we can bring rigorous evidence to increase impact and returns of transport investments. And I'll start us off a bit more focused on the methods. We'll then have 2 quick lightning talks so you can see those methods in practice in terms of innovative data and evidence. And then we're going to put everyone to work. So we're going to have actual case studies that you will walk through and really get a feel for what we're talking about. So it's not just something on a presentation, it's something that you get to actually work through yourselves. So I really don't have to tell anyone in this room, but we know that transport agencies have very limited resources and really large, costly projects. And so at the end of the day, what we want to know is how do we get the most out of every dollar we spend so we can maximize those limited investments and achieve our goals. The challenge is that ex ante, we don't always know what will actually work or how to implement most effectively. So for example, if we want to increase the use of public transport and we have a limited set of buses, do we put those buses on fewer routes, but then we have more buses so that wait times are shorter? Or do we have more routes with less buses so that we can decrease distance to stops? We're not actually necessarily sure ahead of time what's going to lead to more people using the public transport. If we know that most rural women are walking, how are they going to benefit from the roads we're constructing? Do we provide communal transport? Do we provide bicycles and training? There's a lot of options out there for us, and we want to see not just what works, but what is going to give us the largest impact. So that's where the iConnect for Impact program came in. Back in 2015, we started as a collaboration between FCDO, the research department at the World Bank, where I sit, and our operations colleagues. And we wanted to bring innovative data and rigorous experimentation to this sector because we need that evidence to tell us where we need to be investing our resources. We work across sectors and also across the world. Now, why impact evaluation? So why do we have this program? Why do we want to invest in this space? Well, I will start with a very silly example. So suppose we want to see how we can make roads safer. And so we say, okay, well, let's go to the data. Let's see, what are the trends in road traffic crashes? What else might be moving along with as well and changing as those road crashes are also increasing or decreasing? And one thing that we can see if we map the data, we look at a variable that seems to be moving at the same rate as road traffic crashes, is the per capita consumption of milk in the US. And it looks like those two lines are going very much in trend. So we might say, oh, well, if we drink less milk, we're going to have less crashes. Now, obviously, that is a very, very silly example. Everyone here is probably thinking, why are you even showing me this? But this kind of thinking happens all the time. We say, okay, well, let's look at the trends in road crashes. Oh, we implemented a program on helmets. So if we see a decrease in crashes, then obviously that helmet program is leading to that, right? We just make that assumption. And so we need to actually think through, well, what is causing the outcome that we're interested in? And that's where we have this important distinction between correlation, where things might happen at the same time. We might implement a program, and then we might see changes in an outcome, but it doesn't mean that that program is causing that outcome to happen. So monitoring data is good. We do want to monitor our projects. We want to see the inputs into the projects. We want to also look at the outcome variables and how those change over time. And that tells us, for example, how many trips are being taken and if the number of trips are decreasing on a bus. But again, it doesn't tell us what is causing that decrease. So why are we seeing, for example, a decrease in trips? Is it that there's been an increase in price? Is it a cyclical drop during the summer? Is it the opening of a new toll road? We need to understand what actually causes our outcome to change, because then that will then tell us where we should be investing more so that we can invest in the things that are leading to the kinds of change we want to see. So again, to give kind of an example, walking through another case study. So suppose that the city introduces a subsidy program with the goal of increasing access for low-income users. And the question they want to answer is, does this lead to an increase in public transport use? So let's look at our monitoring data. And we just look at the number of trips before and after the intervention for those that received the subsidized program. And we see that the average monthly trips are going down. So according to monitoring, trips decrease. So did the intervention have a negative impact? Well, not necessarily. What we don't have is a counterfactual. So if they had not received this program, what would have happened? And the problem is that we can't see that. We only see people in one situation. So they either got the treatment or they didn't. And so this is where we have to think about, how do we resolve this? And how do we find a counterfactual or a similar group of people who did not receive the intervention that we can compare our group to? And to create that counterfactual, there's different ways. The gold standard is what's known as randomization. So the idea is that, say we have the subsidy program, we could randomly choose who receives the subsidy or not. And that can allow us to have two groups that basically the only difference between them on average is just whether or not they received this treatment. And so then when we see the impact, we can then conclude that that impact was caused by our intervention because everything else is the same. Now, especially in transport, we know that randomization may not be possible. We're going to build that corridor where we're going to build it. We can't necessarily randomly decide where to put it. Or even with a subsidy program, we may not be able to randomly assign subsidies. We might need to assign them to given people. And so there's also what we call quasi-experimental methods, so ways where we have found a comparison group with very similar characteristics that allows us to be able to still compare what is happening. And so going back to our case study, where we're comparing our low-income commuters that were eligible for the subsidy to those who were ineligible. And we compare trips before and after the subsidy. And so here we look at before. The control group and the treatment group are relatively similar. Now, importantly, and what I didn't mention before, is that there was a period of flooding that would have reduced public transport use for everyone. And so when we look on average at trips are going to be lower for everyone. But importantly, what we see is that the impact for the treatment group is higher. So that group that received the subsidy, even though they have less trips than they did before because of that flooding that led to everyone using transport less for a period of time, they have more trips than the comparison group. And so actually, according to impact evaluation, our intervention had a positive effect. But again, if we only had the monitoring data, if we had no comparison to allow us to account for the fact that there's all of these other things happening in the world, our interventions are not in a vacuum. And especially transport interventions that might take 5 years to implement, there's many other things that are happening. And so we need to find a way to control for that so that we measure the true causal impact of our interventions. And so measuring that impact requires high quality baseline data, so collecting data before our intervention and after our intervention. And ideally, we want to have data both on those that received the intervention or benefited from it, and also those that have not. And this idea of bringing this kind of rigorous evidence is something that the private sector already knows. US firms spend over $20 billion annually on what's known as A/B testing, or exactly what I just explained, experiments where they try, okay, what if we showed this versus this? What if we did this type of advertisement versus this other one? And they randomize people and identify what works to increase their bottom line. Amazon ran 12,000 experiments in just 1 year alone. And companies that do this kind of testing are able to learn what works and scale it fast. And this optimization is not a cost. This is how you maximize profit and market share. And we can similarly take this into our work and think about, well, how do we maximize our investments to get the most out of them? So to give a few quick examples of this in practice, and you'll see a few more in the lightning talks. One is in the space of construction and kind of building our projects and the jobs that are generated. And oftentimes, the large infrastructure projects love to talk about the jobs that they generate. But I realized, well, we don't necessarily know, are those jobs leading to better welfare in the long run for those workers? What is the impact of those jobs? So we conducted a randomized evaluation of low-skill construction jobs on the Dakar BRT. So basically, we had a long list of people who were interested and eligible for a job. So we randomized the order of the list, which also helped to fairly assign who was given an opportunity. And those workers that were called were offered a job, and then there were a set of potential workers for whom there weren't enough opportunities. And so we were able to compare those to see what the impacts are. And while we saw some short-term employment gains, increased formality, there was no lasting effect on wages or career path. So these were fine jobs, but they weren't setting these workers on a better path. So then with a different set of workers, with the Express Train, we tested a soft skills training focused on conscientiousness. And again, we randomized who received this training and who did not. And we found that workers benefited significantly from this training. They had a 10% higher chance of still being employed, and also 23% higher wages. And so this very, very low-cost intervention that could be added to the massive amount we're already spending in the construction could lead to much better welfare outcomes for our workers and already be generating benefits from the projects that we're investing in. And this way, impact evaluation can help us find how to increase the impact of our investments. Now, another example where, again, we can't necessarily randomize, looking at the Rural Road Rehabilitation Program in Rwanda, there we used fleet tracking data. So Jamie mentioned the use of innovative data. We're using real-time GPS data on trucks to help us measure what is happening on the roads that were being rehabilitated and those that were not. And we saw rehabilitation reduce transport costs by 75%, And we saw much faster traffic with 30% higher speeds. Those impacts degraded after about 10 years, but that was in line with the expectations for the road construction. And once we were able to measure these rigorous impacts, that then allowed us to do analysis like looking at the benefit versus the cost for different roads. And we actually were able to identify that just 5% of the road network actually had higher benefits than costs. And if we target our rehabilitation towards those, then we can see much higher returns on our investments, actually double those returns. Now, that isn't to say that we should only be targeting that 5% of the road network. There's many other reasons we may want to rehabilitate roads in the country, but the idea is that this is providing really important input and evidence for policymakers to think about how they prioritize. So we can use impact evaluation to help governments in sequencing their objectives and thinking about where they should be putting those investments. And finally, in Lagos, we've been studying the new bus reform initiative, and there we collected, again, a wide variety of data, GPS data, bus car data, paratransit census, surveys of drivers and commuters, and again, comparing those routes that were treated and received a new line and control routes, so where they haven't yet received the new line, they will in a future phase. And we measured that new public buses led to about 1.84 million per month in consumer benefits, but paratransit drivers wound up actually losing out. So the drivers that were on the paratransit system were directly affected in terms of lower wages and lower incomes because also of the competition. And so this also shows us how impact evaluation is helpful not just to measure the impacts, but also potentially some negative consequences that can arise that then allows us to potentially mitigate those. And now the government is working to see how can it better incorporate the paratransit drivers in order to increase the benefits for them as well. So we have an opportunity to increase the impact of our investments. If we invest in data, that makes impact evaluation possible. If we invest in impact evaluation, that tells us what our investments are actually causing. It's allowing us to see what we're able to produce in terms of those outcomes that we want to see. And finally, if we invest in impact evaluation, it can help guide better policy so that we can get to those goals much faster and more effectively and make sure we're using every dollar as best as we can to achieve our goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Sveta, for a wonderful presentation. This presentation clearly showed how impact evaluation is different from the traditional monitoring, and which gave you a very clear idea of how you can deliver the good impact. So next is about next two presentation is writing talks on specific examples. First, I'm inviting Jigan Lee, Principal Economist of ERDI, about rural transport and urban transport.
Okay, thank you very much. So thanks. Sveta already presented some examples of impact evaluations for World Bank. And here, I'm just, in 5 minutes, I'm going to show what the ADB has done. So in the past, we have also done a number of studies to evaluate the impacts of our transport investments. So we should do more. So this is opportunity for us to work together. And could someone, okay. I'm going to show you two studies, and the first one is the impact of all-weather rural roads, and by our two colleagues of ADB, Lee Ming Chen and Yang Lu. So this is a Sri Lanka project. It's called iRoads. It's in the south of Sri Lanka, and it's in the mountainous areas. Sorry, the fonts, it may be difficult to see, but basically, what they're trying to do is, as Sveta mentioned, it's important to have the treatments, which are the roads our project intends to build or renovate. And then we also need to have the counterfactuals. These are the control groups. And so if you look at one of, for example, this one here. We have the blue and the red. So these are blue lines are those treatments. So these are project roads, and then we have the red line, those are control. So they can just look at the map and identify the roads. They're in similar locations, similar communities, but some roads are under ADB projects, some other are not. Okay, so here is one example. You have the yellow is the yellow lines are the comparators, and then the blue lines are the treatments. And then we can compare, right? If we have the data were collected on the beneficiaries along the two roads, the treatment and control. And a lot of questions were asked for this study. I just show you one, which is on the whether it's difficult to access the health service. And after the construction of the roads, you can see that for the blue one, here the light blue are the roads and ADB projects. And the dark blue one is the one under ADB projects. You can see people, the difficulty to access health has been declined. So that's one example showing how the roads can benefit. The second study is the urban transport setting. It's about the MRTs, okay, the metro lines. Sorry, Yi Jiang is our ADB colleague. Another author is Eiji Yamada-san, who is our moderator. Sorry, I should have put your name there. So this example is in Bangladesh. It's very traffic, and so there are a number of these MRTs are planned and being built. And the first one that's built is the blue one. There, sorry, the clicker doesn't show this one. And then all the others are the roads that's planned but not built. So potentially they can be our counterfactuals or the control group. So one challenge for us to do the study is that we need to spend money to collect the data, right? You would survey the people, that typically is very costly. So in this case, an innovative data source was used. They don't need to collect any data by going to the households. They just use the Google Map. In a Google Map, you pick any two locations. You can search the Google Map, and then it will tell you how much time it takes for you to get from this point to this point. So my colleague take the Bangladesh, the Dhaka city, and simulate millions of trips from any 2 points in the city. Use Google Map to calculate how long it would take. So you do this before the investments and after the investment. And then these the chart on the side, on the right side, showing that. So T here is the investment, and this is before, and that's after. Okay. So before the investment, and the commuting speed was lower, and after the investment was after the real MRT was opened, and you can see that the speed increased and sustained by, so the increase is about 15%. So here are some conclusions, but basically this is very doable in our ADB project. So with this design approach, and especially with now a lot of new innovative data that's available, this can be done in a faster and a cheaper way. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Digan. So these are very interesting two examples on the transport sector, rural and urban. So next, I would like to invite Preeti Gautam, Principal Economist, Senior Transport Specialist, Road Safety Lead of ADB. She will share how new technology and alternative data sources can strengthen road safety analysis and decision making. So over to you.
Thank you, Yeji. So my presentation will focus on a pilot project that we just completed a couple months ago. looking at how we can use technology and AI to collect safety performance indicators. And I'd like to thank the government of Japan and the High Level Technology Fund for the support in this. So just contextualize, a little bit of context. We know that road traffic injuries take the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the Asia and the Pacific, one person dying every minute. The economic cost is also quite high, 3 to 5% of GDP. But in addition to that, road crashes also have a significant implication on the performance of our road assets, right? Unsafe road networks tend to experience more operational disruptions, more supply chain disruptions, higher insurance premiums, and also higher maintenance costs. And also lower levels of user confidence. So not addressing safety actually compromises how high performing our road asset actually can be. And part of the challenge that we've had in prioritizing safety is that we haven't had reliable data. Can you hear me okay? No, okay. Is this better? Okay. And crash data is really difficult to collect in many countries because it's scattered, it's collected by the police, it's collected by the health system, and it's also collected by the transport system. So relying on crash data to measure safety performance is not the most effective way to collect safety performance data. So as a part of this project, we looked at 3 safety performance indicators, and we challenged ourselves to look at more proactive data because crash data is highly reactive. It looks at what's gone wrong after people have already been injured and harmed. So we challenged ourselves to look at more proactive data and also challenged ourselves to look at publicly available and technology-enabled data sources. So not relying on government or administrative data at all. So we looked at 3. 1, the percentage of the road network carrying 75% of the traffic, and this tells us the exposure and risk, the corridors that have the most exposure and risk. Second, we looked at the proportion of traffic that's traveling over the speed limit. And this is really important because speed is the strongest determinant of both fatality risk and injury severity. So 1% increase in speed actually increases the chance of a fatal crash by 4%. And the third indicator we looked at was the proportion of two-wheelers wearing helmets. And as you know, in the Asia and the Pacific, over 1/3 of fatalities are power two-wheelers, and helmet use can reduce the risk of fatal injuries by 37% and the likelihood of brain injuries by 67%. So we looked at the entire road network of Thailand and the entire road network of Maharashtra, India. And so for the first indicator, which roads carry 75% of the road use in a country or jurisdiction, we partnered with TomTom, and we used open source road network data combined with GPS-based data. And we found that in places like Thailand, just 12% of the road network carried 75% of the travel. In Maharashtra, India, just 33% of the road network carried 75% of the travel. So that tells us instead of focusing our interventions on the entire network of Thailand or the entire network of Maharashtra, that if we focus our energy in that 12% or that 33%, we'll get more bang for buck or more impact with limited resources. Second, we measured vehicle speeds. This should be a video. Measured vehicle speeds and compliance with speed limits. And for this, again, we used GPS and TomTom data. And we included only free flow traffic, avoided intersections and congestion. And we found that compliance was generally high in high-speed roads, but pretty low in interurban roads. And this is important because it's in the interurban roads that we see more mix of traffic, more vulnerable road users. And so that helps us also identify where we should focus our intervention. And I'd like to highlight that we looked at these points, these data points, for an entire year continuously. So that is billions of data points that we use to create some of these ratings. And we put this all into a map-based dashboard where policymakers and project teams could zoom into certain corridors and be able to see risk patterns and link them directly with infrastructure design, enforcement, and policy decisions. The third indicator we looked at, we actually used AI and computer vision. We took millions of crowdsourced imagery from a tool called Mapillary, and we were able to measure helmet use at scale across the entire network. And so we saw, for example, in Maharashtra, India, only about 1 in 5 riders in rural areas were wearing a helmet, whereas passengers, there was almost no helmet use. So again, this helps us see where in our network do we need to invest enforcement instead of, spreading our limited resources too wide. And this was also then put into that map-based dashboard where teams can go in and look at what the helmet wearing rates could be. So you can imagine if we were to collect this data manually in terms of traffic counts, speed counts, helmet observations, how much of resources that would take. So we're looking to expand this project across more countries in the Asia and the Pacific. We also see this data interlaying with other transport data, and we hope that this will then be used to do before and after safety performance ratings of roads, help inform and target interventions, and monitor risks over time. So hopefully this gives you an idea of the types of data that's available if we were to not rely on administrative data and government data, which sometimes is quite complex and might not be reliable. So thank you for that, and hopefully that's helpful for your case studies.
So thank you. Preeti gave an example of how the data, not only survey data or administrative data, but the other types of data can help you to understand the very important policy implications. So then we will move to the session of the interactive exercise. So I think we have 6 tables to be in a kind of separate groups. So we will decentralize the groups. So if the audiences, maybe if you were in the backstage, maybe you can move forward to find your seat. And we have maybe 6 or 7 more facilitators. So could you raise your hand, your facilitators? Yes, so facilitators, people, please give the seat to the participant who are sitting behind, and to, so please move forward who are sitting behind, okay?
There's lots of space.
Yeah, yeah.
Here, so we have people come up here. And then let's just make sure, is there one facilitator per table?
Yeah, one facilitator per table we have. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So, so we will have 2 exercises. We hope if you have time. First one is about the measuring the impact using the rural road example. And another one is about the data, so how to utilize the innovative data. So I think if it is okay, I would like to invite Sveta again to introduce the exercise, okay?
Well, I think AG's already done a great job of introducing. So again, we have our 2 case studies. The goal is not to work through these as quickly as possible. It's really to think through the questions. So if you only get to exercise 1 in your table, that's great. If you get to both, that's also great. The idea is to walk through, so there should be these case studies at each table. If you need one, maybe raise your hand, or we'll kind of go around and make sure that there are enough of them, and you can start reading through and start discussing. So basically go question by question and discuss each question with the team, and that's why each table has a facilitator to help with that discussion. We'll spend about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less, on the first exercise, and then we'll come back together for 10 minutes and hear from each table a little bit in terms of the discussion, the different questions, and then we'll have hopefully time for a second exercise where you'll get to work on your own project. But let's start with this first one for about 18 minutes.